Hello class. I wanted to make one last short video before we go on spring break. It's a really nice day out and I know a lot of you are probably getting a little stir crazy at home, so spring break is a welcome treat. I'm not really expecting you to do much over spring break, but I thought I'd make this short little video talking about rhetorical analysis, just so that you might think about things over spring break. I know for myself, I spend a lot of time thinking about what I want to write, and then when I sit down to write, I have a rough idea. So you might just be looking at different ideas for a music video that you want to analyze. So when we break apart rhetorical analysis, we have to start with what is rhetoric. Basically, rhetoric is effective communication. And you step back, a little step back, and you're like, well, what's effective communication? Effective communication is using the correct choices. So choices in communication, those have an effect on an audience. So the choices that you make, that filmmakers make, that musicians make, all those choices have an effect on their audience. And certain choices will set yourself up for success. So like, let's just say you go to a fancy restaurant. You sit down and the waiter comes up to you with a t-shirt that has an offensive slogan on it. That might change how I view that restaurant, that person. You know, we're spending a lot of money, it's a really nice restaurant, and this guy comes in with an offensive t-shirt. Same thing with choices in wording. How you present yourself as a writer, how you present yourself as a speaker, will have an effect on your audience. So one of the first things you want to do is explain the text in the rhetorical situation. What is the overall context of the text? And I'm going to use text and composer. When I say a composer of the message, I don't necessarily mean music. I might mean in these music videos, yes, it might have a lot to do with the musician and the band, but it also has a lot to do with the choices that the director made for that video. So another thing you want to look when you're looking at the text is what's the nature of the content. A good example of that is back to that t-shirt example. In the restaurant, it very well might be inappropriate, but at a rock concert, it might be very appropriate to wear that t-shirt. And then finally, where was it at and what was it designed for? What's that text designed for? Who's the audience for it? The second is you want to look at choices made by the text composer. So once again, it doesn't necessarily mean music. It's just who created that text. And some of the things you might want to look at that, is it loud or soft? Heavy metal, you have a little bit more loud of a message. Another thing is the organization of the message. And then finally, is there a logic versus an emotion? Is this trying to play upon the emotion of the message, or are they trying to give a logical message? This will very much, this is an important component, because sometimes you have to give speeches where you're just rah, 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 rah. Maybe like a halftime or something, where as a coach, you can tell your team is not playing with the energy that they could. So you might want to build that person up. But versus maybe a logical speech. In that situation, it might not make the most sense to say, you guys are really screwing it up out there and you're not playing well. Maybe it'd be beneficial to do that, but sometimes it's important to use emotion. Sometimes it's important to use logic. Now, as we move on, we want to look at what the effects of those choices are on the audience. How do these decisions affect an audience? Different approaches will affect people differently. Some people might respond to that emotional plea. Some people might not appreciate that emotional plea. So, and this goes into why did the composer choose these? So maybe 80% of their audience appreciates a very logical message, so maybe they go with that choice. And then that leads into how these choices relate to the audience. So that's kind of what rhetorical analysis is, I want to go over some wording that you might want to consider. Any of the keywords in the textbook will definitely help you in this analysis. One of the biggest ones, remember the ethos, pathos, and logos. Those are valuable to break apart messages. Is it more logical? Is it passionate? Is there ethical? Another word choice you might consider is in-group versus out-group. There might be little things that maybe you are analyzing a very niche band that only a small in-group of people enjoy. There might be messages and choices made that benefit that group. Another thing you might want to look at is a relationship or relationships with the audience or within the video. Is there a family unit? How do they show that relationship? Is the singer trying to create a relationship with you? There's a little bit to be said too with that relationship thing. When you think about who's actually in the video, is the main character in the video the lead singer or the band, or is there somebody else playing the lead character in that? So you might want to look at that in terms of relationships. Remember Hofstede, all those components can come into play and be good tools to use in rhetorical analysis. Looking at that power distance, masculine versus feminine, the different cultures that are created within that world. Some subtle things to look out for. That can have a powerful effect, but you don't think about it unless a lot of you might, or some of you might have taken a film class and you talk about some of these. But a few things: color gradient. What colors did they use? If they're a heavy metal band, they might use darker grays and blacks and have a darker look than, say, a Katy Perry video, which is normally colorful and, you know, a little poppy. Another thing to look at, the subtle things to look for, is the angle of the camera. Every single shot is very well thought out. The camera angle, what they're trying to say, is well thought out. So different camera angles will give you a different sense of what they're trying to accomplish. Tom Cruise is not a very tall guy, but the way they do camera angles and stuff, he's always about the same height of whoever he's co-starring or starring opposite of. Another subtle thing, who is the subject? Once again, is it the band member? If you're doing a commercial, is it a mother? Is it a father? What are they trying to sell to? Are they trying to sell to children? So maybe children would be the subject of the commercial. In commercials, always, you'll have to look at it because the subject's always the product they're trying to sell. What's the overall message as a whole? And then maybe some of the smaller messages. There's a bunch of smaller things that come together. And then finally, it goes with bands and musicians, but also products as well. But what's their credibility, their street cred? If you're doing heavy metal or some rap videos, there's a certain credibility that has to be given, or it doesn't come across as authentic. A lot of music we are drawn to because of the authenticity of who's performing that, and that adds to the credibility. So just a short little video talking about rhetorical analysis. If you type in rhetorical analysis, there's tons of videos. And just a word, do not pick one that's already been made. If you do pick one that's already been made, I'll look through and see if there is something. If you have a vastly different message, it's all right. But don't try to copy somebody, because it's just better to do your own work. So that's all I have. I hope all of you enjoy your spring break. I won't be making any videos. Your time's your time next week. Expect me to be back on either Monday or Tuesday of the week that we get back to go into class and everything. So hope everything's good. I know it would be nice to be able to go someplace for spring break. Some of you might be, but best to be safe, I think. So have a wonderful spring break. Talk to you later.